because I don't know what I'm going to say.
Well, who are you?
Hi. My name's Lynda.
Where do you live?
I'm a Canadian. And as you can see out my window, I live in the north. This last spring, my rhubarb patch kept giving and giving and giving, and my freezer got full. So I decided that I would stew some rhubarb and can it for later. Well,
And tell them about your apple tree.
my apple tree last year
Just about fell over.
it almost fell over. It was so heavy with the apples. So I put a bunch of them into the freezer, and I still had them this year when the rhubarb was out. So I mixed rhubarb and crab apples together, and it turned out pretty good. So then my husband started, he's a computer-holic, and he looks at anything. So one day he calls down from his little computer room while I was sitting at my computer in the living room and said, "Watch Lynda's pantry." So I started trying to find Lynda's pantry on YouTube. I was spelling her name wrong. She spells hers with an I, mine's with a Y. Well, I finally found her, and I was hooked. I started watching her videos. Then I went to her Bane's channel, Bear Prepper, Cat's Cradle, and Mrs. Wolfie. They were the ones that got me into the canning. Then my husband, wonderful man that he is, decided I needed a new hobby. He went out and purchased what size?
22 quart or 22 liter?
22-liter pressure canner. I don't even like pressure cookers. They scare me. But after spending the money, I figured I'd better learn how, so I made him do the first bit of it because I wasn't going to touch it. But I learned from watching more than from reading. So he showed me how to do it, and my pressure canner has never been into the basement where it is supposed to go when it isn't canning season. The cats are starting to look at me when I start saying, "I've got nothing left to can," and they look at me as if, "You can't can us, we're family." As you can see, I have a bit of a weird sense of humor.
It fits right in here.
But anyway, I started the pressure canning, and a few of my friends think I'm weird. But the funny part is, they never turn down when I give them a gift of it. So I guess I'm not weird enough to ignore, and they certainly appreciate what I give them at Christmas time, or just because I feel like giving somebody a gift. So I will keep learning from the videos. I will show you things that I try, like the shredding of the chicken today. I had them thawed out, and I was going to take it all off the bone and raw pack it. Well, about 6 days ago, I developed a couple of abscessed teeth. I am not in the mood to stand there and take chicken off a bone, so I threw it into a pot with some vegetables, seasonings, and tomorrow I will can the stock, and I'll figure out what to do with this shredded meat for supper tonight, and I will probably freeze some for later.
Now be honest, Lynda. When you started out, it was because you had cucumbers and onions and all kinds of stuff, green tomatoes especially, running wild in your garden, something you hadn't seen before.
Actually, the green tomatoes were the best.
Yes.
I made green tomato mincemeat. And I think I started off with 24 jars and I'm down to 12. Don likes them.
Yeah.
And for years he had been talking about
Mincemeat.
not the mincemeat, pickled pumpkin. Now, I have never heard of pickled pumpkin. But you have to pressure can it, so I always said, well, I couldn't do it anyway. Well, I tried it this year, and he loves it, and he smiles. So I guess it was a job well done. Next year, I will have to do more jars, though.
Yes.
So, but the meat is a lot of fun to do.
Now, how did you get into the meat? Like, I'm standing here, I got that.
This is a 500 milliliter jar of hamburger. All I did was brown it, and when I put it in the jars, I put in about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and now I can make shepherd's pie with it. I could, if we ate a lot of tacos, I'd have taco meat. You could mix it with macaroni and cheese.
But you never thought you could do that.
The only canned meat that I grew up with was tuna fish and salmon. We didn't even like click or Spam. I didn't know that you could can potatoes and all that. My mother never did it and we never bought it. So now I am somewhat disabled and there are days that I just am not up to cooking.
Somewhat disabled?
So,
you have a choice between your crutches or your wheelchair, right?
So now, if I don't feel like cooking, I can go down to the basement, grab 3 different types of jars off the shelves, and I can have supper on the table in about half an hour, which is great. No planning, no fuss, no muss. Just open the jars, heat them up, and there is supper.
Yeah.
So.
And what have you got in your basement right now? Just jars and jars and jars? And lids? And rings? And a couple of empty jars? And what do you like as a present? Empty jars.
You're telling all my secrets.
Not all.
But anyway, my basement shelves are full of, I've got relishes, I've got pickles, we're not big jam eaters, but we like dipping sauces for chicken and pork, and I've got a lot of different types. I call them plum sauce, but there's not a plum in them. There's oranges, there's peaches and nectarines, pears, pineapple, and they're all nice dipping sauces, or you can put them on pancakes. I've got canned hamburger, chicken, chicken stock, chicken soup, turkey, turkey stock, beef stock, raw packed beef, beef in stock.
Now, there's one thing I want to bring out, Lynda. Why don't we just go out to the store and buy this?
Because I can pick up.
What's the real reason that I don't go for jams from the store?
Don is diabetic and the sugar is bad for him. And that's why I started making the sauces. He's got a sweet tooth.
Oh, yes.
And if I let him have too much of it, I was killing him.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like to keep him around. So I use Splenda. Or if the fruit is sweet enough, I don't put any sweetener in at all. But he loves canned pears. I make canned pears using Splenda and a very light syrup. I've done the same with cherries and peaches. And actually, the reason I started doing that wasn't for a hobby. It wasn't for something to do. It's to make it so my husband will live longer. And it's working.
Well.
So.
Yes, I'm still